when we started this, it was more to kind of get ahead of it. We saw that things were starting to be added to CEDEN, and they didn't really have a lot of rhyme or reason in their methods, or in the analyte names. So we started here for data comparability, because we're not going to be able to compare again different types of, let's say, an analyte targeting Clostridiales versus the Bacteroidales, even though they're both human markers, and that's what they show up in CEDEN as right now. They just say human markers. So if you're looking it up on the analytes, you're not going to be, you would pick both of those thinking that they're comparable, and they're not. So starting at the analyte name, and now we'll start to move through the methods, and which will include, hopefully actual SOPs that people have, developed, and we can add to the database. So if one doesn't already exist, right?
Okay, I guess, yeah. I think I'm just confused because like at least what we have, it doesn't just say human. It is specifically dog bat, and then like the one Cataliococcus is sure. It says gull, and it's like gull 2 techman. So like it already has all this, and so I feel like I'm curious how this is going to map over to be comparable to already existing data that's kind of stored this way, but maybe not exactly.
Well, I don't know if it will precisely. The data that's in there seems to be pretty limited. I don't know how, there's not that much in there. So yeah. I think right now we wanted to kind of, again, jump ahead of it, because these are going to be, there's going to be a lot more of these coming down the pipe in the next, couple of years. So if we can get it started now, we'll have a good framework to work off of for future data.
Okay.
Yeah. Oh. Okay. No, I was just going to follow up a little bit, Adam, on this point of like what Charles said earlier. A lot of the data that is in the database for these, the method linked to it is just ddPCR or just qPCR, and so that's kind of been what a lot of people have been submitting. So this has sort of been like a waterfall process where we're realizing like, oh, these analytes could be better, and now we're realizing, oh, the methods really need to be better. But I think it's okay, at least, so this is not my area of expertise, but my understanding is it's like kind of each assay is very specific as to which analyte it's really looking at. And I guess to me, it's okay to have them so closely linked that it's like, well, you have to use this assay if you want to find gull 2. And it's sort of, they're almost like this one and the same. Someone can correct me if I'm wrong on that point, but so our next step is we're going to be looking at all the PCR methods and probably end dating some that are just like really generic, because some of the methods that are available right now are just like PCR, qPCR, ddPCR. So we're trying to just get a little more specific so things can be more comparable and you know what you're looking at.
Okay, it makes sense that you want to I guess it makes sense to get rid of things that are non-specific. It's just the new things that are specific don't match up with currently existing things that are also specific. So it's like right now we have, dog, and this new one is canine, and we have like gull, and then like abbess. So like it seems like there isn't a close match. It seems kind of like we're adding HG when Mercury's already there.
So the reason I added, so in just that one specific case, like AIDS, was because the GOL2 marker was shown to have, wasn't as specific for gulls as they had hoped it would be, and it actually classifies in a larger class. It was more specific for broaderly AIDS in general, and that's why I added the AIDS in there. But that was, that's a literature by literature kind of account, and that's why submitting the primer sequences allows me to kind of look at it and make sure that the actual analyte name is appropriate.
Okay. So what will the method names be for these?
It'll either be based on the literature, so the citing literature for each one of these assays. HF 183 is easy because we have a standard method for that. But since there's no standard methods for a lot of these, that's again, we're gonna have to develop that on a case by case basis, which is going to be the next step in having kind of a business rule for a method for these. Because if I cite, for instance, the bacteroidales, if I cite the literature that the primer was developed on, well, the primer was developed with using qPCR, right? So is that literature appropriate when you're using those same primer sets for ddPCR? Likely not. We'll have to look at, whoever's running that will have to submit an SOP, and we'll have to look at that and add a new method name for that specifically.
Okay.
Okay. Oh, one quick question, Tori.
Yeah, I think the only thing that does, I was looking at the analyte lookup, the only thing that does have the current like 255 characters for you is that analyte description. So if you're not able to add another column, I don't think it would fit in the group or any other column, just so you know.
Okay.
Just wanted to let you know.
Thank you. Yeah. We'll see if we can fit it in, or it may end up having to be an outside reference.
Yeah.
But yeah, we'll look further into that. Thank you for that suggestion. I agree we should be storing that. Okay. Thank you very much, Charles, for answering those questions. And we'll look at where, if we can store the primer sequence and where that would be done, and make some modifications as necessary. All right, then we'll move on to isotope dilution analysis. We talked about this previously as well, and made some changes accordingly. Last time we talked about if we had this bullet in the guidance that said that you should specify which IDA was used in the lab comment field or lab result comments, and there was some concern about trying to put things like that in the comments for usability and for ease of doing that, because comments have to be entered manually into most systems. And then we talked a lot about how you would match the two things up, the target and the analog. And we talked about using QA codes and analytes, and it just seemed like it was not going to be straightforward, and maybe not the worth. We wouldn't get enough value out of knowing that compared to the trouble it was going to be to track that. So the suggestion now is to drop that bullet, so that wouldn't be required, and then have an additional QA code. Tessa, was there anything else that you wanted to point out, or correct me if I didn't say that correctly?
No, I think you said all that right, but I was just talking to Andrew yesterday afternoon, and we're thinking we could add another bullet of information. So we added this GIDA code for if your isotope dilution analog recovery was not within control limits. And I was just gonna add a bullet to clarify that would be added to the IDA, and then that would also be added to any analytes, target analytes that were quantified or that corrected based on that particular IDA that wasn't within the control limits.
So that would kind of identify the pair. If there were multiple pairs that didn't match up, then you wouldn't know which is which, but is that, you put it on both?
Yeah, you would put it on both, and it could help identify the pairs, but also it would just alert you to which compounds, which target analytes you know, may have that qualifier because it was quantified with an analog that didn't meet the control limits.
Okay, I'll need that last part of the bullet
Yeah, well,
later.
we'll
Okay. Adam?
I think Tori was first.
Oh, I thought it was from before, but
Oh, it might be.
Oh, no, I was just going to say that last bullet point that you just said was perfect because that's what I was going to ask and that is applicable because it'd be applying it just how we do the GN for surrogates. So
exactly.
That's perfect. Thank you.
Yeah,
great.
that's exactly what we were thinking.
Oh, and the only other item, Jarma, I was hoping is, I know we're still kind of processing all these, but I was still hoping we could put that example in the Excel template so that when they look, when someone, well, one, so we can look at it all together here. And then when they download an example, they can have an example of this. Would be kind of nice.
Yeah, I did.
Okay.
Yeah, I wanted to get it set before.
Okay, thank you so much.
All right, Adam, sorry.
Oh, no worries. The only thing I was going to say is like, if at all possible, it'd be great to get these analytes like put together, like the full list of them for PFAS and BPAs and oxyphenol toxalates and like all. We just have a lot of data coming in where we're having to be like, just send it however you want it and we'll fix it later because we don't have analytes yet, but by the time they're finalized, we're going to have to update it all from surrogates to IDAs. And so it would be great to get the IDAs, like the analyte names, finalized.
Tessa, do you
Oh,
possible?
I mean, I think if everybody is good with this guidance today, then I think we can, you know, start following these business rules for anything coming in. So, Adam, are you asking us to make these analytes, or I guess I was assuming you would be
No,
submitting
it's
them?
right. We can work with Axis had said that you had been talking to them a little bit about some stuff, so we can just compile all the 200 or whatever surrogate analytes that we currently have and just make sure that they're all sort of, because some of them are so old that they don't follow the current surrogate business rules, so there might be some updates there, as far as like just making sure that they all follow the new like description that and formatting and stuff, because I think some of the rules around PFAS analyte names has also changed. So basically, yes, we can submit for all the different methods, I guess, based on what we currently have and based off of Axis's methods. But I didn't know if it was like, I didn't know if other labs would have different thoughts or like I guess it doesn't really matter. Like if other people label with at other places, it's fine. So yeah, we can compile that and submit it all.
Our intent was it would just be moving forward that if you were going to request a new analyte, that it would be in line with this guidance, not that you would change something that there is already an analyte for.
Oh yeah, no, it's not about changing. It's just that like we have surrogates for all these different isotope dilution methods. There for like 7 of them or whatever. So it's just, since we already have those, just updating those, like we won't update older data or older analytes, but use that as a basis because we already know how they're labeled and stuff, and so it's just using the current surrogates as a template for the new IDA analytes.
Okay, great. Anything else? Cassandra?
Yeah, so just maybe this is along the lines of what Adam just asked, but the current vocabulary reviews that are being held up until these decisions were made, should we just go ahead and apply the business rules that you're talking about here, and then resubmit, or during the next vocabulary review, things would hopefully get resolved.
Yeah, I think if it sounds like that people are generally fine with this proposal, so we can go move forward with that, and we can talk to Jennifer, our reviewer, about you know, that they should follow this. So if you resubmit those, then she can review those newer ones, and then hopefully the old previously submitted ones, assuming they don't follow this convention, would fall off the list.
Okay. Thanks.
Okay, good. All right, wonderful. Thank you. That was a good discussion, and we can finish up that last bullet and finalize, and then put it in the respective places. Some of it will go in the data entry guidance document, and some of it will go in the vocabulary request workbook, and then we'll put an example in each of those to reflect this. All right, onward. Now we're going back to our passive sampler business rules. So after our meeting last time, and Adam had pointed out that the note that I had added to discuss, including multiple sorbents, ended up being kind of conflicting with the language that I added for replicates and units, because I was going to the mass of analyte per housing. And so to resolve that, and also talking to somebody in OEMA and reviewing what David Alvarez had sent me previously, I think it is best to instead go to analyte or massive analyte per sorbent, and to include a picture such as this one that shows that there can be these multiple sorbents per housing, and so that if you deployed this and you were looking for the same analyte for each of the 4 sorbents and extracted them together, that resulting mass would be needed to be divided by 4 for your final answer. If you were looking for 4 different analytes for these 4 different sorbents, that you wouldn't do that division, because each one would be its own result of mass. What do you people think about that option?
Can you repeat that? I couldn't follow. You were saying, yeah.
Okay, that the resulting units would be mass of analyte per sorbent, and revise the note. Sorry, let me make this a little bit bigger. These business rules specify that the results be reported as mass of analyte per sorbent. When multiple sorbents are extracted together, the total mass of analyte found should be divided by the number of sorbents that were extracted together. Did that make more sense?
Yeah, I understand what you're saying. that's not how we do it with SPMDs. We use more, like we've talked about before, we don't report mass of analyte per sorbent. We report milligram, or it's like picogram per liter, because we're using the SPMD, and we will use more than one SPMD to increase our detection. Yeah, so I mean,
right, so that intermediate step, so I have additional thoughts to address the reporting of the aqueous concentration reporting, but that intermediate step of before you get to there, the just the mass of the analyte per sorbent, when you use multiple sorbents, do you put that into the calculator? So is
yes.
this the, let me get the calculator.
It doesn't go into the calculator. It goes into the data reduction before you go to the calculator.
Okay, so is this the calculator that you use?
Yeah.
Okay.
I don't know if, yeah, same version, yeah.
So Gemma, if I could help, I think there's an intermediate step that is missing in your information, and that is after the membranes or the discs in the case of the pulses, which you illustrated here, after they're dialyzed and processed and go through solvent exchange, you end up with a liquid in some volume, and that's what it's those numbers that are analyzed by your analytical instrument, and those are the numbers that are then processed in the water calculator. So nobody, at least not for compliance purposes, is going to be reporting mass per sorbent or per membrane. It isn't of any value except for screening. If you're going to report for biological effects, compliance monitoring, and all that, you'd have to reduce to effective water concentration, which is what the engine of the water calculator is. I don't know what either regulatory or other informed purpose it would serve to be reporting mass per sorbent, because that's simply saying we saw this much in this period. It doesn't tell us effectively what's biologically available and what you're trying to control.
Yeah, that's definitely understood. In previous discussions, most other people that I heard speaking up haven't been as comfortable as you and Jenny with the resulting aqueous concentration, and so we were leaning towards this not getting to that end calculation. I have added, because you guys seem so comfortable with it, I did add it or started to add this alternative that at least if you're using this calculator where it seems pretty well defined, there's a lot of the coefficient values available, that those could, this alternative path that identifies much of the same information to enter, except that the matrix would be sample water, the method name would be the calculator, and the unit name would be mass of analyte per volume of water. And so we haven't really, I just added that part, so we haven't really talked about that yet.
That's great. That's a good idea. so that there's the both options for people who aren't converting their passive samplers into an aqueous concentration.
Right, so that would be for this top part where we've talked more about, and where I'm where it says the units are mass per sorbent. So before we move on to the other part, are people comfortable with that option of mass per sorbent? Adam?
I just had a quick question. It looked like in the aqueous concentration section, you called out like using the calculator as the method, and I wasn't sure, is there similar, like, because they both have a collection method code of passive sampler. Is there some field where we can be like, okay, so these are the ones where they were reported per sorbent, and these are the ones that were reported as an aqueous concentration, or is that just also in units, I guess, like passive sampler plus units or something like that?
Yeah, I mean, the method and the unit, no, not just the method and the device would tell you that it was collected with a passive sampler, and with the resulting aqueous concentration.
Okay.
Tori?
Oh, sorry. So how can, and again, I don't know much about this, but in terms of the mass of analyte per sorbent, are we going to really be able, unless they have the exact same sorbent, are these going to be comparable to each other? Or it's just really, because I feel like from what I'm understanding, like people are just building their own and putting their own sorbent. I'm just wondering how comparable they are to each other when you do per sorbent when there's multiple different sorbents.
Yeah, I don't think they really are comparable, but I don't know. I mean, we do gather a lot of information about the collection device with the sizes and the type, and there's some other information in here that we stuff in there. So that should give you some information, but it seemed like we had been talking about a pathway that they would be trying to make them comparable, and it seemed like we weren't really gonna get there. We talked about doing a mass of analyte per mass of sorbent, or volume of sorbent, and at least it seemed the message that I took away with, and we can, that I could be wrong, but it seemed like because of the variability, unless we were going to go through each type of device and sorbent shapes and media and all those things, that we weren't really going to be able to get there.
Okay.
Maybe Marco feels differently, or whatever you have to say, Marco. What is it?
Oh, I just had a question about the calculator and storing the calculated value. We had talked previously about people being able to store the different coefficients and values, and with the estimator, would they still be required to submit what coefficient values were used in those calculations in case somebody needed to double check the values?
Yeah, we don't really have any place for these PRC values, so so it would seem like, and we could maybe do the volume, but yeah, that I don't see any place for the PRC. So in that case, unless we can find that, I don't think we could provide all of the coefficients.
Or like that log KOW row, are you allowed to change those values in that, or are they set?
Was
It's
so
in-
that
it's in
I
that-
think these are provided. So I don't think we would necessarily need to store them if you referenced the version of this calculator that you use. So because then this is essentially providing it. So that's kind of fixed, but the PRC values are user inputted.
And that's because they are specified by the project. So it's somewhat specific. And if you were interested in specifically understanding that project, you'd go to the author of the project. It wouldn't be something that's universally available. It's, you know, my city, if we were interested in some specific anthropogenic compounds, we would specify to Sigma or Aldrich or whoever was doing that what PCR we would want. It's not, and if somebody else was interested, they'd have to come to us. It's not something that is universally published. We pay for it.
I think what would be ideal is if we could just easily add 5 more columns to your data entry template in CEDEN, and so people could provide that and other people could see what values were used. But we don't have that flexibility at this time to add those additional columns. And but I do understand that it's specific to your project that you're doing.
Yeah, I guess I was just wondering, like, for that first PRC one, for PCB 14, the log KOW is 5.28. But if somebody were using this calculator and they said, well, I want to use another literature value of 5.58, are they allowed to change that value within this calculator?
The calculator won't stop you, but you'd have to reference your source. If Jarma could scroll down, you'll see that these values are, yes, you can see right next to the log KOW that there are specific references because they keep getting updated all the time. So yes, if you were going to modify it and you're not using what's referenced there, you need to provide that reference. Otherwise, people can pick up numbers from there.
Right, and so that's what I'm saying is that's why people have issues with this, because somebody could change the value in that calculator and not let anybody know. And so when you try to confirm or double check those values, you're not coming up with the same result. And so that's the issue and the concern that people have with reporting these values is if you don't have that raw data to know what went into the calculation, you can run into issues like this.
Marco, would you be expected? I would expect then that they couldn't use this method. They would say they used the calculator, but that it was modified, like a modified method essentially. And so, I mean, yeah, people could not do it, but people can also, not report correctly. But it, would you, if the business rule was if you didn't go with the log K values or any of these values that are in the second part of this spreadsheet, that it wouldn't be this method, it would be a modified method. You wouldn't use this calculator spreadsheet as your reference.
That's correct.
Yeah,
And I was just going to echo what Jonna just said, because what you seem to be saying is somebody can be either inadvertently or deliberately fraudulent. And there's no way to protect against that. If you're going to use this, the reference is there. If you're not going to use this, provide your reference. That's just the simple answer to that. Any deviation from that is either deliberate or inadvertent, but still not true.
So go ahead.
Over time, does this calculator change? And so, like you said, you were putting versions of the calculator in the method?
Yeah, this may be the most recent, because I haven't done this work in years now, but this may be the most recent version. It does change because USGS, as you can see, does all the updates on it. It's not personal, it's a national standard. And as you know, USGS has a national charter for environmental methods. That's why it was first allowed for compliance reporting.
So yeah, at this point, it seemed like this route was, you know, pretty well documented and, you know, laid out for people with the coefficients being, you know, again, made available nationally. So I was thinking if we were specific to that method, using the spreadsheet for the SPMDs types, that we'd at least, you know, it's going into a little bit of not having every value used, but still being accepting that these devices have been around for a while, and and there's this calculator that people use, and so we should kind of trust that and be able to get to a more usable value, because as noted, the mass per sorbent is okay for the screening value, but doesn't give us really information beyond that. So at least in this one specific case, we could you know, allow for the aqueous concentration. Adam?
Just sort of an ignorant question on my part, where the method for when reporting aqueous concentrations, if it is the calculator, the actual like analytical method, does that matter? Is it different?
I think the analytical method matters, yes, and I think that's an important point to put there. There's no doubt that it does matter, because the, you know, the capture methods, the resolution, the MDL, all of those things are instrumentation based, yes.
Could we put both then, that you would put your intermediate analyte mass per sorbent, and then if you were using the SPMD USGS calculator, that you would put another row for the aqueous concentration?
From my point of view, the critically important part is that endpoint. It's the compliance monitoring endpoint. It's the concentration, the aqueous concentration. If people are interested in the intermediate, which is like a screening blurb, you should perhaps afford them that, but you'd be remiss not to provide what really is being determined, the effective concentration in the water. That should be your goal. The intermediate processes might be of use to somebody who wants to know whether you can see it at all. That's it, what that
But
is.
I thought it was important to note, if you were using the calculator, to note that, but then, so that's why I thought we could use that as the method, but then that doesn't leave any place for the analytical method, as Adam was just noting.
Yes, the analytical method, I think, trumps that part of it. And unfortunately, I have to leave. I have another meeting.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you.
Jerm,
Sure.
Jerm, I just have a quick comment on that. So I mean, what if the guidance is to report both? So report the raw value so that you have the analytical name associated with the analyte, and then you have the calculated value with the for the water quality unit, or the water unit. Then that way people are allowed to look at both. It's kind of similar to thinking about like habitat data, or something where somebody measures stream width, and you have 10 of those different individual measurements, but then maybe you want to report a average stream width. Then you would have both the raw data and the calculated result stored accordingly within the database. It seems like that's a cleaner way of being able to capture the analytical method with the analyte name based on mass per sorbent. And then if somebody is able to report the calculated value, you report that analyte again with the method name of the USGS tool, and it's clear that it's a calculated value.
Yeah, I like that method. I was a little concerned about the kind of perceived duplication, but they are different measurements, so, or different values representing different things. So I think it's okay, but so I will kind of make modifications to reflect that and try to get it out ahead of time next time. And hopefully that'll satisfy both kind of camps. And but we will wrap up because we're after 11. So thanks again for great discussion, and have a great day.
Thank you so much, Dharma.
Victoria.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.